Video game movies have always been a tough nut to crack. They often struggle to jump from one medium to another, as creators try and balance loyalty to the source and taking creative liberties to build on what is typically bare-bones stories. On the battlefield of video game attempts, there are many casualties. But Super Mario Bros. Is sort of this odd attempt. It certainly looks like the source, and it has this vibrant, visual style that really captures the world created 40 years ago. But there is still this major issue, this itching sensation that I had the entire movie of just, give me a controller already. If I'm going to watch a movie where the thinly written plot has the main goal of just moving me between stages, you may as well just make them an expensive cutscene and let me play through the level. But I think this is both the biggest draw of the movie, as it helps it feel like this authentic love letter to the fans, but it is also probably the source of its greatest weaknesses. The film is really about as complex in terms of plotting as what you find in the usual Mario games. You have someone kidnapped by Bowser, Bowser wants to marry Princess Peach, and destroy the Mushroom Kingdom, along the way, and Mario has to work through various levels to stop him. As I said, this isn't really going to be something that's totally going to be a negative for the fans. Some may even appreciate that similar innocent simplicity to the source. When you get down to it, the makers of this film seem to approach everything like it's some sort of grocery shopping list of everything from the Mario property. And they don't really miss an item. Side-scrolling platformer? Check. Super Mario Karts? Check. Donkey Kong barrel sequence? Check. Super Smash Bros. Scene. Check and check. But if that's what you're here for, to see key locations, games, characters, and the world brought to life, you likely will be entertained and come out of this having a good time. And yet for the uninitiated, those just wanting more meat on the old story bones, these are the people more likely to come out feeling a tad underwhelmed. This is a throwback to old school video game adaptations, where the makers felt they really needed to make sure that the audience knows for sure that this is a video game. And don't you dare forget it. It's reminiscent of a time when you had to have a first-person shooter scene in something like Doom, or replicate exact game moves in Assassin's Creed, or, oh my god, please, never again, actually have clips of the video game interspersed in something like House of the Dead. And the Super Mario Bros. Movie is trying hard to make similar one-to-one translations whenever and wherever possible. That may delight fans, but it's also at the risk of alienating casual viewers, with trite scenes like Mario literally going through the tutorial and telling you how to play a Mario game. And I'm not exaggerating. I can only imagine this was for the parents, as it serves no real narrative purpose. Mario goes from this humble plumber to just this superhero overnight. You may as well have just made him a superstar to begin with. This is not character development or plot development. This is the equivalent of teaching grandma when to press B and A at the right times. And that's not to knock these video game-inspired sequences. They are the best part of the film. And they often are a lot of fun with some really great energy and creativity. It still doesn't excuse everything in between feeling like a cutscene. A very good-looking cutscene, but nothing you wouldn't find in some middling video game that's just being used as an excuse to get you from one level to the next. And some may be saying right now, it's a Mario movie. How much plot could you possibly want from someone whose entire character boils down to jumping on his enemies to save a princess? And fair enough. But we are a long way from the video game curse. We now have shows like The Last of Us, or Arcane, or even Castlevania. If something like the Lego Movie, based on the biggest corporate toy brand in America, can bring their A game and deliver something with a lot of laughs and a lot of heart, then Mario, based on the biggest corporate video game property, really doesn't have an excuse to feel as lazy as it does. You need to go no further than the opening studio logo to know kind of what you're in for. And I'll admit, I'm not the biggest fan of Illumination movies. Sure, they have some that I sort of enjoyed, like the first Despicable Me, but most I find kind of, nah. And others, I downright loathe. Like watching the first Minions movie, just, I don't know, kill me, burn my eyeballs out of my socket. Thank you. I'll take that. Illumination through the years has kind of gained this reputation for fairly lazy animation, bland art styles, and derivative stories. They also try to really lean into their wacky cuteness. It's definitely their bread and butter from even their first film, Despicable Me, with the Minions as background comedic characters and a little girl holding up a stuffed animal and yelling, "It's so fluffy." They're sort of the equivalent to a guy who wore a fedora once and got complimented on it. So now he's decided, this is who I am now. This is my defining trait. Although the Super Mario Bros. Has this gorgeous animation style unlike anything else they've done before, it still very much falls into this hyper-annoying, cute comedy, which can hit, but just as often misses. But I'll give Illumination credit where credit is due. They seem to know that this one was going to be big and put a lot more effort into it. Aside from that slick animation, the voice cast all does a really good job and blend well into their roles. Yes, even Chris Pratt. He uses this sort of lighter Brooklyn Italian flair that never feels too over the top or becomes just outright annoying. Seth Rogen is probably the weakest link here and just sort of sounds like Seth Rogen, but it's Seth Rogen, so what else did you expect? And I think the original voice actor also makes a nice cameo, even if it does mostly just reinforce the question of why didn't they just use him? Star power. That's why. The score is fantastic, and it's great to hear these themes just, played by a full orchestra. But even then, Illumination sort of has to undercut itself by playing these just sort of cringy dad rock hits. Not that the songs are bad, they're just sort of on the nose, overdone choices, or their placement just feels obnoxious. Do I need to hear Take On Me when we're heading through the jungle? Especially when they have so many great songs from Donkey Kong Country that they could have gone to. Needless to say, I am not surprised when Illumination chooses to go for that low-hanging fruit. Adapting scenes or making obvious jokes that we've all been making on the internet since basically it was invented. Your princess is in another castle. Eh? Remember that? But Illumination is at its classic most lazy when it's just trying to get to the next video game-inspired sequence. The height of this laziness would be in the second act, where they have to get an army to resist Bowser. An army that they end up never using and never needing. It was all just used as this very basic excuse to journey from one video game set piece to another, while visiting some iconic Nintendo characters. The army and getting them don't factor into the conclusion of the story in any way whatsoever, besides taking up roughly a third of the film. In fact, I think you could remove the entire second act and go straight to the third, and nothing would change in the climax of the movie. This only adds to the cutscene feel of all the interconnective tissue. Illumination, again, is kind of catering to the younger audience with this, and I won't dog them for that. Younger kids deserve something to watch just as much as anyone. Fans will also likely get a big kick out of it. The theater I was in was full of people in full costume and really enjoying all the callback and references. And at the very least, it seems to be using these member berries more effectively than others have in recent times. For me though, packing all these references, game tributes, and Easter eggs that one can into this very short runtime, it all just kind of makes it feel like I'm watching one big advertisement. Something designed more to sell me their video games and properties rather than tell a decent story within this world. Because it is a bright, fun, and poppy world worth exploring. The goal here, I don't think, was ever to get me into the story or characters. Mostly, it made me want to go home, turn on my Switch, and play some Super Mario Odyssey. And I'm not necessarily sold on that being a bad thing, and for Nintendo, I think it's likely mission accomplished. But those are just my thoughts on the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Be sure to hit that like button before you go, and subscribe. Keep those reels turning. Thank you very much.